So welcome to another episode of our podcast. I recently saw a headline that said that millennials are the first generation that make less money than their parents. So I thought it'd be kind of interesting to dive into that a little bit more and talk about what's going on. Are millennials doing something wrong with money? Or are they just not doing anything wrong and it's just a bunch of millennial bashing hype? We're going to figure that out today. So to help us out, we got Adam Sosnick, A.K.A. Sauce Talks Money, very successful Instagram and YouTube guy. He's the man who's made it his mission to make sure that the Instagram generation makes sound financial decisions. He's had a very successful career in the financial industry, but before finding success, he was a college football player who almost made it to the NBA. That's not a typo. He sold tacos, threw parties, did stand-up comedy, and was even a groomsman at the Kardashian wedding. Adam, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. What an honor.
No, it's an honor to have you. All Honors are all ours.
Double honor.
Absolutely. Honors all around.
Millennials get a bad rap. You know, millennials are the largest generation in U.S. history. There's 80 plus million millennials. So the next largest generation in U.S. history were the baby boomers, who are our parents. So which a lot of millennials strive to be nothing like their parents. So I think to paint broad strokes over 80 million plus people is very hard to do. And we're also, you know, us being the oldest millennials, even the millennial generation is split into two, which we discussed earlier, has been sort of divided after the 2008 recession. But regarding millennials, you know, I started my show, Sauce Talks Money, really to help millennials get better with money. After being in the financial industry for 10 years, which I sort of lucked out getting into, I started my show basically because I realized that most millennials were sort of clueless when it came to managing their money. Maybe they can make money, maybe they want to hustle and want to be millionaires, but they don't necessarily know the basics. And the slogan of my show is save that money. So how did I come up with that name? Where when I first started my show, I went and I started interviewing every single financial advisor that I know, or every, you know, successful person that I know. And I was like, just give me the best piece of advice that you have about money. And 9 out of 10 financial advisors said quite simply, save your money. Because when you save, the possibilities are endless. So then I took it to the streets and I did a lot of man on the street stuff, you know, a la my old comedy days. And I asked a very simple question to millennials, save that money or spend that money. And what do you think the most common answer was?
Spend it, live for today.
Yeah,
YOLO.
80, 90% of the millennials were like, spend it, you know, YOLO, who cares, whatever, spend it, buy your shit, you know. So I was like, holy crap. Not only are they going in the wrong direction, but, you know, things are trending the wrong way. So definitely save that money, but we can build upon that. It's sort of ironic that I've become the save that money guy, because the South Beach scene is the pinnacle of just make it rain, spend it, right. Like the exact opposite of living frugally. You know, I'm a big fan of hip hop, and just being in the club, seeing what people spend on popping bottles and looking cool and drinks. And literally there's clubs like 11 here in downtown Miami where it's very cool to just throw money up in the air and literally make it rain. They'll not sell you, but they have stacks of hundreds ready to go, you know, in rubber bands. You give them $100 bill, what have you, and they give you your $100 and you just make it rain. And that is, you know, right. When you're hosting a show about saving money and you're talking about saving money and you go out at night and like everyone around you is just making it rain, and you know that they're not all millionaires and billionaires and they're just average people trying to look cool. Yeah, that sticks with me.
Have you been to 11?
Of course. This is exactly what I'm talking about.
I've never been.
Hi,
honey, I've never been. But a friend of mine went.
A guy I know really
But a guy
well.
I know went there, and he asked one of the girls that works there, "Hey, what's the craziest thing you've seen someone do here?" Because that place is open 24/7.
Yeah,
it's a 24/7 liquor license. They will serve you food. We're like, what's the craziest thing you see here? She said,
free plug for 11 here, by the way.
Yeah,
Amazing.
yeah, free
awesome
plug for 11.
time.
Which is, by the way, known worldwide. Everyone knows about 11.
Okay.
yeah, she goes to my friend and she says, Julian, I once saw a guy spend 3 days here and not leave once. And I just like take that like for a second and think about what it takes to spend 3 straight days at a strip club.
How much it
money
costs.
you
I think she said somewhere in the vicinity of 40 grand
Right.
over 3 days.
I would think that's kind of cheap coming out of that place. That place
Yeah.
is like made to like take thousands and thousands of dollars out of your pocket.
One big
Correct.
money suck.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. You could literally walk on money over there.
Yeah.
People are throwing around money that much.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Oh,
Yeah.
plus the amount of cocaine you need to consume to survive 3 days in a strip club. Like, I'm surprised he's alive.
He might not be.
He might not be. She didn't say he got out alive. That's true.
Rest in peace, Raul.
Rest in peace.
It's a real Miami story.
That man died a legend.
So that's
Is that a good light intro?
That's a great light intro.
The good mullet intro. Now
mullet
the
intro.
business.
You're making me sweat over here.
I do that.
There just seems to be this pressure to have like this baller lifestyle all the time. And do you think that like has a lot to do with like these headlines that we're seeing that this generation is just so careless with money? They're all about like the image, the facade. What can you say to them at this point? Like they have all these influencers that are telling them that's what you got to do. Like what can they be doing different?
Yeah, I think number one, I don't think that every millennial is stupid and careless with their money and is making it rain. I definitely don't think that. There's a large contingency that are frugal and saving and doing well. It's just, again, 80 plus million millennials. If there's 10 million millennials being idiots, well, all millennials are idiots. So there's a lot. It's just such a large generation. I think the most common thing that I've found with being in the financial industry and sort of one of the main reasons for my show is that, you know, we've all been to high school and I won't say we all, a large amount of us have been to college, and very few of us has ever just taken a money class or a financial course.
Should be a prerequisite when you get out of high school.
I don't understand why it's not, or even in high school where, hey, here's what to expect when you enter the real world. Like I was recently speaking at a speaking engagement at a business networking group when I spoke in front of 50 people. And I said, raise your hand if you're in your 20s. And 80% of the room raised their hand. Raise your hand if you're in your 30s. You know, the other 20% raised their hand, and there was a couple people in there that were, 40s or older. But for the most part, we're talking about millennials who are basically, 1980 to 1996-ish, give or take. So in their 20s and 30s. And I said, raise your hand if you've ever taken a money class or a financial course. And a handful of hands went up, 5% of the room. And then I said, raise your hand if you've ever taken biology or algebra or chemistry or physics, and every hand went up. And all those subjects are great and they're important, but they're not more important than fucking money.
Yeah.
So it's just mind-boggling that the school system has just generally failed people with the basics. And, that's, I think, the major reason why, because you go to school to learn a craft or a trade, or, whether you go to school for law or for engineering or for art or for business, anything, to become a teacher. But that's ways you make your money. A money course or class would be to teach you what to do with your money. And that's where I feel people have been let down.
Yeah, totally. And we're doing a lot of millennial bashing right now, but in fairness, there's a lot of things stacked against a lot of millennials. And if you look at some of the stats, it's not all that bad that they're not being super delinquent on a lot of their debts, right? Because like right now, student loan debt is a huge problem for millennials, where it's taking up a huge percentage of their income. And so, those are things that they have to deal with. I mean, I think the exact numbers, I don't want to quote them exactly, but I think it was something like, I think student education cost is up 20%, 50% in the last 20 years. And I think that the actual income that you get from it when you adjust from inflation is only up about 16% or something like that. So obviously that means that a bigger percentage of your salary is going back to pay off student loans, which means you have less disposable income. So, that is a big factor too. And if you look at the delinquency of these student loan debts, it's not going through the roof either, which means they are being responsible and paying it back. I think that when we get into the discussion, it's that the extra money, are they saving it or spending it? They're spending it. I think that's something that we've seen a little bit too.
Yeah.
And there's also that movement now to actually cancel student loan debt, right? Which is kind of, and it's kind of weird how it all kind of plays together, because according to Pew Research, the millennials are the most educated generation that we've ever seen before. At the same time, you usually think that that education equates to financial success and long-term financially sound life, but because they're coming out of school with so much debt, we're kind of seeing something different, which is why this whole movement of student debt cancellation comes along, and it kind of plays into everything that you were just saying. So, is there something else going on here? So these guys, they're coming out of school, they're more educated than ever, find their student loan debt, whatever is excess, they may be spending it, but are there other factors at play?
Like macro factors?
I mean, it could be macro factors. I mean, I know that a lot of as we were talking before we went on air, right? Like the millennial generation's kind of split before and after the Great Recession. Mm-hmm. So a lot of guys coming out of school, out of college during 2008, there weren't any jobs waiting for them. So a lot of them were possibly forced into entrepreneurship. Some people were forced into taking salary positions, if there were any available. Are there different things that kind of happened over the last 10, 15 years that kind of force them into these situations that maybe people are overlooking and making it seem like you can compare previous generations to this one, and this one's just really that much different?
I'm getting the cue that it's getting hot in here.
Yeah, a little bit.
All this millennial bashing,
It's heating up the room.
light the mics on fire.
So it's not just me.
I mean, let me just expound upon everything that you were asking, and millennials and debt and money. A couple of things that come to mind. Of why the millennial generation could potentially be the smartest and oldest, brokest generation in U.S. history. There's no doubt that with, as many millennials that are going to college, that's a great thing. Education is great, no doubt. The student debt is the problem. If college were free and everyone had these great educations and you didn't have to pay for it, great, but that's just not how it works. But
I've also seen that college could be an ROI negative investment, right? In most situations.
Totally agree. I'm a fan of education and getting smarter. I'm just not a fan of the traditional college approach, especially if it's centered around you taking out $50,000, $100,000 of debt. But the macro factors, and this is what I've learned being in the financial planning insurance industry, is that there's something called longevity. And millennials are expected to be the longest living generation in U.S. history. So think about that for a second. Most of the people you're going to know for the next 50, 60, 70 years, because we're all going to live to age 90, 100, if not beyond, some say. So what are the factors that we're talking about here? So in financial planning, or traditionally, they had something called the three-legged stool of retirement, right? And I'm going to try to make this kind of fun and cool to talk about. But at the end of the day, if we're talking about retirement, no one's like, oh, let me hear more, baby. Love that retirement talk. But there's something called the three-legged stool of retirement. So picture three legs. And the three legs are, or were, number one, a pension. So I recently spoke at that room I was talking about. I said, raise your hand if you have a pension. 0 hands went up. Do you have a pension?
No.
Do you have a pension?
No.
I don't have a pension. Very few people have a pension these days, right? If you're you're a government employee or maybe a teacher, you have a pension, but what is that, 5% of the workforce? So no one has a pension. A pension, for those of you listening that don't even know what it is, you used to work for a company for 40 plus years, and at age 60 or whatever, you would retire, and they would pay your pension X amount of money each year that you were alive, because you were a good employee, and they, sent you off, and they gave you a gold watch, and they give you a pension, and thanks for working here. Police officers type of stuff. They don't exist anymore. So again, we're talking about the three-legged stool of retirement. So now we're missing one leg. Number two, the second leg in that stool is Social Security. So Social Security, if you're not familiar with what's going on with that, there's a deep, deep fear by the time that we retire, it could be defunct, non-existent, broke, or at the best case scenario, you'll receive half of what you would expect. So the average person now who's retiring, their average Social Security check is like $1,000, maybe $2,000, depending on what you've paid in. So if you think that when you're 65, you can live on $1,000 a month or even $2,000 a month, you're going for a rude awakening.
It's difficult to do today, much less in 30, 40 years.
So now we're talking again about the three-legged stool of retirement, and 2 out of the 3 legs are wobbly at best. So now the third leg is just your personal savings. How much money you've saved, how much money you've invested, your 401k, IRA, Roth IRA. So long story short, millennials out there who don't have pensions and you can't count on Social Security, that's why it's so important to understand why saving is so important, because you're going to be living a long ass time. You don't have a pension. You shouldn't be relying on Social Security. So it's on you. It's on you to get your money right. And the quicker you start, the better off you'll be in the long run.
So most people think, though, that, you can go get a financial advisor, right? That's going to help you out with this stuff. Maybe when you're 20, 25, it's not the first thing you're thinking about. And the reality is most financial advisors, unless you're making a certain amount of money, they're not going to be talking to you.
Correct.
So what do you do? Like, what do you do with your first paycheck or with every paycheck?
Yeah. So, when I started my show, I started the show just to have a conversation about money. Hey, money exists. Here's how you got to handle it. And let's see what people know. It's sort of like starting a science project where I started with a hypothesis that millennials don't really know that much about handling money. And that's how I started. Now, what I basically realized is that my hypothesis was correct. They are making money for the most part, but they don't necessarily know how to handle the money. So that's why I've started this money coaching program. So look, when I started in my career, before I started in finance, as you said in the intro, I was doing stand-up comedy and club promoting, and I thought I was going to be an athlete, and I was teaching for a while. I was doing all these different things, but making no money. So when I entered the financial sector, my net worth, and your net worth is basically your assets minus your liabilities, my net worth was negative $30,000. So I was worth less than a homeless person.
Right? You're worthless.
Worthless, and negative. So now, using this financial skill set, and making money and using the basics, my net worth is approaching $1 million, which is pretty damn cool. But being a millionaire isn't what it used to be, right? So I remember when I had some money to invest, and I think a friend referred me to this financial advisor. He said, "Oh, talk to this guy. He works in the financial industry. He needs a specific financial advisor. Talk to him." The first question, not like, "Hey, what's your name? Tell me about what you do." He's like, "Do you have $100,000? Because if you don't, that's my minimum."
Yeah.
And I said, "Yeah, not the best way to start a conversation, Dave, but that's typically a financial advisor gets paid usually what they call on AUM, assets under management, and their typical fee is 1%. So I invested $100,000 with this guy, and he charged me 1%, $1,000 to work on my investments. So what I've come to realize with this money coaching program is that I've broken down finance into 6 principles of wealth. And investing, what a financial advisor does, really just covers one of the 6. So they'll help you invest your money, but investing is just one of the 6. So what I'm encouraging millennials to do is, if you don't have enough money to hire a financial advisor, which you may or may not need or want or can afford, at the very least, get yourself an affordable money coach. So I walk people, this is what I'm doing, walking people through these 6 principles of wealth. And what I tell people is, I don't care if you're making 40 grand a year or 400 grand a year, it's the same 6 steps. And let's walk you through these steps. Let's get you a score of how you're doing of these 6. And let's assess where you're at and where you can get to. And the end goal is being 6 out of 6. And most people who I run through these 6 steps are 1 out of 6, 2 out of 6. And it's my job to get them to 3 out of 6, 4 out of 6, 5, what have you. But to answer your question very directly, no, most millennials cannot afford a financial advisor. And quite frankly, a financial advisor cannot afford to take the time to help your average millennial.
What's like the minimum you have to be making?
To
be talking to financial advisor, or to,
I mean, it's not, I don't necessarily know if it's a minimum to be making, because maybe you've inherited some money, or you've had a windfall, or you've had good years and bad years. But most financial advisors will tell you like they need at least $100,000 to work, for their time. So I would assume you need to be making minimum $100,000, $200,000 a year to really get yourself a real financial advisor.
So let's say I'm straight out of law school, have like $250,000 in debt.
Right.
Got a job paying me like, I don't know, 60 grand at a nice law firm.
60 grand.
60 grand. 70
And you owe
grand.
how much?
$250,000.
Okay. All right.
What do I do?
Go buy yourself a Mercedes and a nice Rolex first, right?
So in Miami.
No. It's always a knee-jerk reaction to when you get your job and you get a pay increase to go out and live a better life. And what I found is that the people that actually start to build wealth is, let's say you graduate law school, or you even graduate college. You're still 22, you're still 24, you're still 25, what have you. Live with a roommate still. Rent. Keep your costs low. So there's something that this is like my whole message when I walk people through 6 steps. And this is ultimately a callback to your first question about we're making less than our parents, is that the game has changed. So in the 80s and 90s, when, the movie Wall Street came out, and Michael Douglas, and even the movie Wolf of Wall Street that was based on the 80s and 90s, there was a slogan that really our parents and the baby boomers lived by. And that slogan was, "He who dies with the most toys wins." Right? So think about that for a second. He who dies with the most toys wins. What does that mean? Get yourself a house, 2-car garage, 2 cars, get yourself a boat, motorcycle, jet ski, jewelry, watch, toys. And when you die, you had all those toys you won. So what we've come to find out is it's no secret that debt, 4-letter word, probably the worst 4-letter word out there, you die with a lot of freaking debt. Mortgage, car loans, student loans, motorcycle, this, that. So it was pretty interesting to me where I saw an article recently in the Washington Post, and it was sort of alarming. And while I was working on this money coaching program, and I was like, oh shit, there it is. And the article was, "He who dies with the most toys now loses." And I was like, oh shit, there it is. They fed you this dream. Consumerism, capitalism, materialism, buy. And all that has done is, for the most part, led people into debt, foreclosures, divorce. So really what my biggest message to millennials is, now knowing that he who dies with the most toys now loses, the biggest message that I would tell anyone listening is that is now wrong. And what I'm a huge advocate is, he or she, because women are working now too, not just the he who dies, he or she who lives with the lowest overhead and the highest flexibility now wins. So what does that even mean? You can just rent. It's cool. You don't have to have a car anymore. I haven't had a car in almost 10 years. I just Uber everywhere. I've saved so much money, right? Thinking outside the box, not going to college, not taking on student loan debt, not opening up a retail brick and mortar location and doing your business online. The game has changed. So what I'm a huge advocate of is saying, do you have an updated game plan for 2020 and beyond? Like, we're in 2019 right now. 2020 is around the corner. Like, we're no longer in the Reagan and Clinton and Bush years, so stop thinking how our parents thought. So
go ahead.
Yeah, so I would love to get deeper into that. So, like when you're let's say you were approaching a millennial, or you're going to give advice to a millennial. like Paul had mentioned earlier, they just left school. They have, a portion of their salary, their income is going to be dedicated to paying that off, and they have choices to make of what they can do with the rest of it. Do you recommend things generally on percentage basis? Like you should probably spend this much, the rest of this on rent, this much on transportation, this much on savings, this much if should go into investments versus savings. And do you differentiate savings versus investment?
Yeah, loaded question. I'll try to unpack that.
Yeah.
No, all good. I love the question. So yes, based on percentages. So I told you that I have this 6 principles of wealth, or this 6-step plan. And step 1, which any financial advisor will tell you, is to have a budget. Mm-hmm. Some people don't like the word budget. So, call it a spending plan or a living plan, whatever you want to call it. It's you make X, here's how you spend it. So a budget is your income minus your expenses. So within your budget, there's something called the 50-30-20 rule. 50% of your income should go for your needs. 30% can go to your wants, right? And 20% needs to go to paying off your debt and or savings. So within that 50-30-20 rule, it's more of a guideline than a rule, because maybe your rent is more expensive or you don't have a car.
Right.
So
you can sacrifice one to get more of the other, depending on what you want more. If you're not a homebody, go rent to a studio apartment and save there, and then spend more on the transportation if you need to get around.
It's a guideline. I tell people that, it's not like, oh, you're spending 51% on your needs, you're out of control. No, like in New York City, most people I know that live in New York City, they rent. It's so unaffordable to buy a place. My buddy bought $1 million condo. He's like, you got to come check it out. And I went in, and it was like 400 square feet. It was nothing, but it was really nice. In a building with a doorman. Oh, hey, what's up, doorman? And so they rent. So a larger percentage of their income goes towards rent. But maybe they're taking the subway to work. And, so within your budget, so I break down people's budgets, and I say, look, I'm not here to break down every single thing within your budget. Are you doing the Netflix, or you do have a gym membership? Those are minor things, but within a budget, there's something called the big 3. So number 1 is your housing costs. And speaking of percentages, your housing costs should cost no more than 33% of your income. That's the most. So if you're making $50,000 a year and you're spending $25,000 of it on rent, you need to rein it in a little bit. So again, the big 3 within your budget: housing, transportation is number 2, and then number 3 is F&B, food and beverage. How much you're basically eating, drinking, going out. So other than that, everything else seems to be of lesser priority. Those are the big 3 within a budget. So,
and everything you're describing here is obviously after tax money that you're breaking down, not before.
Yes. Because obviously, I should say that the what I always grapple with, should I say, it's easier to say big 3, but really it's the big 4.
Right.
Because taxes, if you're making $50,000 a year, newsflash, you're really just making $40,000 a year.
Right.
There's something called taxes.
Right.
So the average person pays about 20% in taxes. So the average person pays about $10,000 a year in taxes. So yes.
Yeah.
So the original question, or the original headline, which we're talking about, is that the millennials are the first generation to make less than their parents. That's almost written in a way that makes it seem like that's something that's bad. What if it's just not something that's bad? Maybe millennials, have figured out how to use modern technology to have a lower overhead. You're Ubering everywhere you go.
Yeah.
Maybe they have it right? Maybe to them it's not all about going out and dying with the most toys, but it's more about having the experiences and having the flexibility to do whatever you want to do, right? Maybe, they're good making 50, 60 grand a year. Fine. You have $300,000 in student debt. Whatever, you're going to pay it off eventually, hopefully. Right. Maybe not. But maybe that's the right way to look at it. Maybe everyone else is wrong, and this is being framed in a way that it's just kind of like the status quo, that you want to make as much money as possible and have the nicest house and have the nicest car. But maybe that's just wrong.
Yeah, great question. Look, I don't know how much my parents made. They never shared that amount with me. I wasn't like, how'd you do this week, Dad? So when you talk about millennials are making less than their parents, what does that actually even mean? The only thing that you can control is how much you make, what you're doing with your time and your income. What your parents did a generation ago or when they were working, and what 80 million people are doing versus their parents should be no concern of yours.
Correct.
Right.
You should just be focused on what you're doing with your money. And that's why, I focus on personal finance, A.K.A. your money. So
Yeah, and to break down that headline a little more, I think that it's a little misleading of a headline too, because it's really what it's talking about is the average income is actually up, but really what we're talking about is their net worth is less at the same age of their parents were.
True.
Which is a big differentiator, because obviously they are making more income even adjusted for inflation. It's more of a question of that they're not worth anything. They're getting into more debt. They're not investing their money. They're spending their money. They're all things that are not growing their assets, not growing their net worth.
Right.
So I think that's an important question too. And what are they not? Why is it that they're not able to grow their net worth? Obviously, some of the things that we've talked about earlier. But what are some recommendations so that they can grow their net worth?
When I walk people through the 6 principles of wealth, and I'll gladly walk you through these 6 principles, is I usually start with step 6, or number 6, which I call chillin'. So I ask someone, I say, if you were chilling with money, you didn't have to wake up and have to go to work tomorrow, and your money was good, what would you do with your time? Right? And ultimately, I found out that it comes down to a handful of things. Like, no matter what they say, it comes down to, and I even have the list here. Here we go. They want to travel. They want to pursue a passion. They want to give back or donate. Or they want to leave a legacy, right? Or they want to spend more time with family and friends. That's, I want to do photography. Okay, so you want to pursue a passion. Oh, I want to help the homeless. All right, so you want to give back and donate. I want to be remembered for this. All right, you want a legacy. Oh, I want to go to Thailand, or you want to travel. So what I tell people is, all right, so now that we've identified you're chilling. So basically what I found out, starting the show and interviewing all these successful people, is that the successful people don't retire. Like, the term retirement is even antiquated, meaning nobody just says, all right, like, give me my rocking chair, time to sit by the pool and just wait to die. Like, nobody does that. Everyone has something they want to do with their time.
So I'm sorry to interrupt you there, but that's almost like that Monday to Friday, like, mindset, right? Like, those people that, like, real wealthy people that are making money, don't, like, Monday to Friday, Saturday, Sunday doesn't really make a difference, right? It's not like, yay, it's a weekend, it's Friday.
Right.
But that mentality of you're working Monday to Friday so you can enjoy yourself Saturday and Sunday, and then, like, damn it, it's Monday again. Kind of like that retirement thing. Like, that's the wrong mentality to have.
Yeah, I think there's a quote out there. Sorry, I dropped my pen. There's a quote out there that wealthy people plan for generations and broke people plan for Saturday night.
Yeah. And
that's something that, I used to be that party dude. Don't get it wrong. I was it's Saturday night. I gotta go out. Like, one thing that has helped change my mindset was this very quick slogan, and it says, "Invest your time, don't spend your time." And I found myself spending a lot of my time partying, going out, playing fantasy football, watching NFL games on Sundays, eating chicken wings, bullshitting, And once I had that sort of mind shift where I said, all right, I'm just going to ask myself, when I'm doing things, am I actually investing time or am I spending time? And now someone might say, you can't always invest your time, which is true, but is what you're doing actually worth it? So, and that's just something that has helped me. So so on my weekends, I might still go out and party occasionally, but it's with people that I really want to hang out with, or really actually want to associate with, or that are worthwhile people, not just some dudes in the bar because they're hanging at the bar. So that's something that's been helpful. But basically what I found out is that once you identify your chillin', that's where your money starts. So with this 6-step thing, and then we sort of, because this question initiated with the net worth, and I forgive it if it's a long answer, to back in, I say, all right, this is your why. This is why you want to win with money. This is why you want to increase your net worth. And then from there, once we identify what they actually really like doing, we can back into the next, to really the 6 steps. And the 6 steps are actually pretty simple, but it takes the time to break them down. And it's number 1, having a budget, and that's having a game plan. So the analogy that I make is that, so my favorite athlete is Tom Brady, right? Good looking dude, Super Bowls, supermodel wife. Is he the biggest, fastest, strongest quarterback out there? No, but what does he do better than anyone? Is he has a game plan. Every game, him and Bill Belichick are cooking up a game plan. He doesn't just show up and be like, all right, I'm going to beat the goddamn Jets today and throw 4 touchdowns and here we go. Like, he has a game plan. And that's the analogy for your budget. A budget is just a game plan for your money. So once you can sort of hone in and understand that you need to do a budget 12 times a year. Tom Brady plays 16 games plus playoffs plus Super Bowl. He's doing at least 20 games a year. So do half of Tom Brady and have 12 budgets a year. From there, you've entered, like, welcome to America, capitalism. Manage your money, and now your switch has been turned on. And from there, what I tell people, and this is all with the net worth in mind, before you can win, don't lose. So understand your debt. Most people, I say, how much debt do you have? Break it down. Credit cards, car loans, mortgage. Some people have payday loans, and then they'll know that. And then I'll ask them, what's the interest rate? And they'll go, I don't know. I don't know. And understanding the interest rate is really understanding how money works, because once you can not lose, you can start to save. And what I tell people for the most part is save $10,000. Like, give yourself a cushion. Then from there, start winning the interest rate game. Investing, 401k, Roth IRA, stocks, bonds, crypto, mutual fund, what have you. And then from there, step 5, or the principle 5, is protecting what you've built. Insurance, life insurance if you have kids, health insurance. And then ultimately, those are the 6 steps, coming back down to chillin', which sort of replaces retirement. But what I tell people, the whole reason they're doing that is there's 3 reasons why people lose with money. So I've implemented this six principles of wealth to help you win. But why do people lose? And number 1, which we covered, is just they've never taken a financial class. That's number 1. Number 2 is they're caught in the rat race and make, spend, repeat. They're caught in the paycheck to paycheck mentality. How much did I make this week, this month, this year? When I highly encourage them to graduate to a net worth mentality. And I figured that out when I mentioned I had minus $30,000 net worth. And the number 3, which we touched on, is getting into the 2020 mindset. So yeah, I saw something today that your net worth is way more important than your credit score. So it's all about net worth. Whenever they do the Forbes 400 or whatever it is, they never talk about how much someone made this year or this paycheck. They talk about their net worth. So I encourage you people at home, calculate your net worth. What are you actually worth? If you were to die today, God forbid, what were you worth? Your assets minus your liabilities. And that's really where you stand with money, is your net worth.
Okay, awesome. So
a lot there.
No, it's a lot. It's good, and it's good, and it's good stuff. And I think that is the right mentality to have, right? It's not it's the whole net worth concept is super important.
Yeah, I mean, look, we're doing an hour podcast.
Yeah.
This podcast is potentially more important. Just them listening and hearing these concepts is probably more important than the 6 months they spent in algebra class.
Oh, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah,
or dissecting the frog in biology.
Yeah, that
just
whole
listening
concept.
to this.
Yeah.
I wish I did this in senior year. I didn't. I had to learn the hard way of 10 years of putting in work, cold calling in finance. So listen up. Be thankful for these guys having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like that concept of the net worth. So what are some suggestions that you have to actually building net worth? Like, obviously you already mentioned the 50, 30, 20 rule, which I think is, awesome. That makes a lot of sense. And the budgeting is going to help them achieve that stuff. At what point do, they're say, let's say someone, okay, they take that advice. They don't have any money saved right now, but they're going to start saving. At what point do they stop putting it into savings? How much should they have? And then at what point do they start putting it into a 401k or a Roth IRA or doing some other type of investment? And going into one of the most obvious things that people buy is obviously a mortgage, a house. Obviously, it would take a very, very long time for most people to save up enough money to actually buy that house.
To pay cash,
to buy a house in cash. So, I mean, how do you feel about the whole mortgage concept? Do you think that is a poor investment, or do you think that you should get a mortgage?
It really depends on your situation. Again, there's 80 million millennials. Do you have kids? Are you married? Are you single? Or you have a girlfriend? You have a boyfriend? Like, what's your situation? For me, I've always rented. And what I'll tell people is this. If you rent, right, you have to start investing. Because if you're renting, how are you building your wealth? It's not in your house.
Right.
Right? You have to.
Right.
Obviously you have to get out of debt and manage the debt, and there's certain debt that's worse than others. Credit card debt, car loans, payday loans, consumer debt, the worst. Student loan debt, if the interest rate is reasonable, under 5-6%, maybe you're in no hurry to pay that off. But if you're renting and rent with a roommate, what have you, it's all good. But conversely, if you did buy a house, right, is your entire retirement plan in your house?
Right. Well, that's the great question, because if you really look at it, even right now with mortgage rates kind of on the decline right now, and a lot of people are refinancing, and they're trying to drop mortgage rates to stimulate the housing, getting people to purchase more homes again. But if you were to buy a $500,000 house, and even if it's at 4% interest, 3.9% interest, you're going to end up paying $900,000 for that house if you pay it off over the duration of a 30-year mortgage.
It's crazy.
That's and let's say you go to sell it. I mean, even with the market going up in value, I mean, are you really going to sell it for $900,000 or around there? I mean, in 30 years, it's not necessarily a great investment. Although if you rent at the same time is obviously not contribute, you'll have nothing at the end,
right,
where you might have something. But then at the same time, I see what you're saying. Like, if you're renting and you're investing, saving the money that you would have on the home, and you're investing it, and then you have that 4% coming in that way, as opposed to you paying it out to the bank, that might be the better option also.
Yeah, I mean, it's what I do is that I rent,
yeah,
and I invest the difference.
Yeah.
So if you're renting and you're, so let's say, hypothetically speaking, your mortgage would have been $4,000, but your rent is $2,000, hypothetically speaking. And you're saying, oh shit, look at all the money I'm saving by renting, and you're going out and you're blowing that $2,000 every month, and you literally have nothing to show for it other than some cool stories 10 years later. Yeah, maybe you should have just bought the house. But if you're renting and you're full on putting money in your 401k or a Roth IRA, or you're investing in a business, or just
an investment property,
investing in an investment property, appreciating assets, whatever, you're going to win the game. So, like, you own a house?
Yeah.
You own a house?
Yes.
You own a house?
I do.
So do you love being a homeowner?
Yes.
You didn't sell me on that.
Well, no, I mean, because
yes!
I do love being a homeowner, but I think that there are a lot of factors, like, how much you're going to end up paying the bank back.
Yeah.
That part kills me. I don't like it. So obviously I'm going to try to get out of this house as fast as possible when I'm able to appreciate, make it appreciate a little more,
You got kids?
Yeah, I have one daughter, newborn.
You have one daughter. Congrats.
Yeah.
How old?
She's a year.
Look at you.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So had a kid, bought a house, typical millennial story.
I have a house, two kids. That's right.
Well,
you want to know?
You need a house if you've got kids.
But I'll tell you something. Yeah. I actually have been thinking about it a lot, because I've been seeing more and more people over the last 10 years that have that money saved up to put a down payment, maybe $150,000 on a house. But instead of doing that, they do rent, and they've bought investment properties, and they've built an investment real estate portfolio which is much more valuable than any house he would have bought 10 years ago.
Yeah, totally.
So I always wonder whether or not I made the right decision.
So people get having a house and a mortgage confused with investing in real estate.
Right.
They're
It's
totally
not an
different
investment.
things.
Yeah.
You need a place to live. So whether you're renting or buying a house and having a mortgage, let's put that over here. Like I actually invest, I rent, I actually invest pretty heavily in real estate, but it's not active real estate. I don't, like me, I've had plenty of years of my life getting my hands dirty. Don't want to get too dirty these days. So I don't do active property management. I don't have an investment property. I invest in something called REITs, REITs, real estate investment trusts, where you can invest in commercial property in the stock market. So I'm an advocate of appreciating assets, whether it's stocks, bonds, real estate, mutual funds, what have you. So I invest in real estate without having to actually go visit a rental property or, call a plumber or change the tiles. For me, again, investing time versus spending time. I know so many people with houses that the washing machine broke. They got to go deal with that. There's got a leak in the roof. They got to go deal with that. The pipe burst. Oh my God.
We got Lewis back there shaking his head. Yes.
Yeah.
And rolling his eyes.
So to me, that's like the exact opposite of fun.
Yeah.
So the other day I had an issue with my apartment and the washing machine, stopped. And I don't have to worry about buying a new washing machine. I called the handyman that's part of the condo. He came in, he fixed it up, and boom, it was fixed. I didn't have to deal with it. It wasn't on me.
Yeah.
Same thing, not to go off on a tangent here, but I talk about within your budget, the housing, transportation. I've saved a lot of money not having a car because the average car, take a guess, the average car payment in America. Take a guess.
$350.
I was going to say 3, but.
How about like $499?
Really?
That's the average?
Car.
Well, that's buying a car.
Yeah, buying a car.
Okay. Yeah.
So.
Buy or lease.
Even if it's. So neither.
Don't have a car at all is what he said.
Well, I get it, but if you had to.
What I tell people is, okay, so you've established your car payment. So maybe yours isn't 400, maybe it's not a 500, maybe it's 300. Does it stop there?
No.
You got your car insurance, you got your gas, you got your tolls, you got your upkeep and oil changes, you want to get car washes, you want it to smell good, you pay for parking, you got a valet, the whole thing. And that's if everything just goes according to plan. Imagine when you get in an accident or someone backs into you, like the nonsense that you have to deal with. So I've saved so much money just Ubering everywhere. I mean, granted, I live downtown. I'm not driving to the middle of nowhere. So if you live, 20, 30 minutes away from where you have to go every day, yeah, I get it. Having a car is important, but is having a car payment important? So, everyone wants to, time for a new car. All right. Well, the numbers show that, if you took the money that you spent just on car payments alone, so if the average car payment is $500, that's, $5,000-6,000 a year, right? If you're 25 years old and you put that amount, $5,500 is the max that you can put into a Roth IRA when you're in your 20s. If you put $5,500 into a Roth IRA, same amount you put in a car, by the time you're 65, it's like worth $1.5 million. So most Americans are broke. Most Americans are living paycheck to paycheck, and most Americans have car payments. So most Americans are driving themselves to the poorhouse. So again,
I like what you did there.
See, boom,
I like that.
You're driving the poorhouse. Yeah. So, again, these are the types of conversations that didn't exist 10 years ago, 5 years ago. Like, this is all new way of thinking, that 2020 mentality that our parents could not understand. Yeah. I've learned more just by reading books in the last couple of years than I learned through 4 years of college. Acquiring $30,000 of student loan debt. It's so much easier now. So it's just about updating your mentality and adapting.
Yeah, and I'm really looking forward to the next generation of Uber coming, because with self-driving cars, you're going to be able to take an Uber across town for like 37 cents.
And I think that's when I'll be able to get rid of my car.
Self-driving cars.
I actually did the
Oh,
math.
I'm not buying a car. I think this will be probably the last car I have to buy.
I was hoping my last one was, but in December when it was time to get a new car, I was hoping that the math would work out on an Uber, but I'm like 30 miles from
Well, if you live
house to office.
Right.
So my question would be, all right, so you're married with kids. Do you need 2 cars? Or can you just get by with 1 car? So maybe you need a car because you have a family, you have kids. You can't just be throwing your kids in an Uber wherever you want to go.
Yeah.
But can you do the math? Can you just get by with 1 car? All right, so, maybe you Uber to work, but your wife takes the car to work, or the vice versa, or you have the kids' car and you have the minivan that you're driving around in when you need to get the kids. But because think about it, most people get in the car, drive to work, the car sits there for 8 hours, they get back in the car, they drive home, the car sits there for another 8 hours. So 90% of the time, the car is just sitting there. So, I had, full disclosure, the worst experiences with cars. I always my car broke down. I got in an accident. I got a ticket one time for going too slow. Who's ever seen that? My car, if I hit the gas pedal, the car shut off. This is how ghetto in high school. There was something. I'm such not a car guy. Yeah. I could only put the car in drive, and if I hit the gas, it would shut off. So I drove home from Country Day in idle, 25 miles, and the cop pulled me over like, dude, you're going 5. This is all I got.
When you used to tell those stories, I was never sure if it was actually how it happened or it was a slight exaggeration. But I'm 30 years later, you're telling the same story. I'm sure it must have been true.
I mean, still lying about that.
Son, do you know how fast you were going? Oh, I must have been going 65, 70. No, 7. You were going 7.
You're going 7 and I'm 35, sir. So, okay. So, the point of that story was that recently I didn't have a good experience with cars ever. So quite candidly, never been a car guy. And I get that there's people like, oh, I love cars. This guy's total wrong. Cool. Recently I was in an Uber and it was here in Wynwood. The guy hit a curb, boom, flat tire. And I'm in this guy's Uber. And I pat I get out of the car, look at the flat tire, pat the guy in the back, and I order another fucking Uber.
Yeah.
And I just went on with my life. What did that guy have to deal with?
Yeah.
Changing the tire and or getting it towed and taking a day off of work and losing income or whatever. So it's just so much easier now. And again, there wasn't an option 5-10 years ago. So not a car guy.
So no cars. Got it.
No cars.
Okay, when it comes to moving on topics a little bit off cars, when it comes to investing, what type of things do you like investing in the most? Are they things that allow you to remain relatively liquid, or do you like what do you recommend the most, or what's a great way to start off when someone's investing early? Not they don't have a huge stockpile right now; they're still building savings. What are some of the first things that you like to invest in?
I mean, how I started was just with my 401k.
Yeah.
How do you get one of those?
How do you get one of those?
Yeah.
You usually, so one of 2 things. Either you have a company that offers that. So if your company offers that, or if you don't know if your company offers that, ask. But any company should have that. And a lot of companies have a match, which they'll match a percentage of your income or what you put into your 401k. And that's free money.
Should you always max that?
It's free money. So yeah,
yes.
I would. I mean, so if your company doesn't offer for a 401k, I would say the best possible investment you can possibly make is into a Roth IRA, which grows tax-free.
But these are just vehicles, really. Those are not final investments.
Right. So exactly. So here we go. So those are vehicles. Those are retirement vehicles. So where I've had a lot of my money is I've just put it into an S&P index fund. So right now, Fidelity has an index fund that charges you 0%. Like what?
It's like an ETF or it's an actual index fund?
It's an index. It mirrors an index fund. So you can't actually invest into the S&P 500. So you can invest into Vanguard or Fidelity or Schwab, and they offer these S&P index funds that essentially mirror the market. So I just recently read a book called The Guide to Investing by the Boglehead's Guide to Investing. It was written by Vanguard. Jack Bogle, who founded Vanguard, which is the biggest mutual fund on the planet, and he wasn't the writer, but it was based on his principles. The authors wrote it, and it was basically, it said, all right, like, this is the guide to investing. Here it is. You ready? You ready? And I'm getting hype. You know, I work in finance. What's up? What's up? Okay, before you can invest, you need to do these 3 things. Get on a budget, pay off your credit cards, and save 3 to 6 months of an emergency fund. Once you do that, come back and talk to me about investing. So I was like, oh shit, like he flipped it on you. Jack Bogle, rest in peace. He died this year. So there's things you need to do before investing. But then he said, all right, when you're ready to invest, it's actually not that complicated anymore. And this is what was so confusing for so many people, because when you think of Wall Street, you think of bulls and bears and greens and reds and ups and downs and stock tickers and NASDAQ and Wall Street. Oh my God. And, you know, speaking of Wall Street, you know, in the 80s, you know, the movie Wall Street, Greed is Good, or The Wolf of Wall Street, which was based in the 80s, you know, what I say is the jury's out when it comes to investing. And all those guys, they ended up in jail. All these day trading, buy, sell, go, this, like they all went to jail. So who actually is not in jail, and B, has done well? Look at the Warren Buffetts of the world and the Jack Bogle of the world. And they'll just tell you that investing, there's 2 components in investing, right? And it's time and compound interest. So if you're 25, you've got 40 years until you retire. You have 40 years of growth, the magic of compound interest. It takes time. So if you just simply put your money into an S&P index fund and wait 40 years, you put $5,500 in a year, you'll retire a millionaire. So that was something that made me be like, oh, you know, because that's always the most challenging part of money, because people think of money and they're like, oh, Wall Street and investing and NASDAQ and crypto.
It's complicated, it sounds.
It sounds so complicated, but the answer is it's actually pretty simple. Stay the course, keep your money in long term, keep your costs low. So I talked about having a financial advisor that I had to invest $100,000 with that charged me 1%. That's $1,000 a year, 1%. With these index funds, with Vanguard, Fidelity, they'll charge you 0.01, 0.05. So that's 5 cents, you know, for every $10,000. It's nothing. And it basically, the point of this Boglehead book was the constant buying and selling and getting taxes and taking your money out and the fees is where you lose. Just keeping your money in and staying the course is how you win. So the analogy that I'll make is like, if you just plant a tree, you plant it, you water it, you give it some sunshine, you look back in 40 years, you got a massive ass tree. The whole day trading active approach of buy, sell, this, that is like, imagine just planting the tree and it's like, the market's down, or it's a shady day. All right, take the tree out. We're going to move it. We're going to drive it across town. It's sunnier there. We're going to plant it there. We're going to give it some, oh, no, okay. We're going to move it. We're going to replant it. We're going to trim it. It's like, dude, just plant the fucking tree and let it grow. And that's the simplified version of investing, is just put it in there, watch your money grow, understand that, especially if you're young, 20, 25, 30 years old, 35, what have you, you've got 30, 40 years of growth. Let it ride. Why are you taking your money out? Where are you putting it?
Right. Well, you're also fighting a little bit of the instant gratification feeling that I think a lot of millennials are fighting too. Like they want it quick, you know, so they're looking for higher returns. It's basically the crypto effect,
right.
You know, everyone's seeing 20x returns on their crypto. And of course, everyone bought at 1,000 and everyone sold at 19,000.
Right. I mean, there's a handful of people that have made it with crypto, and kudos for them. But there's also so many more people that lost their asses with crypto.
Right.
And I bought crypto. I bought it when it was kind of high, and when the market tanked, what was I going to do? Panic and sell? No, I understand that this is a long-term play, and I'm just holding on to my, what I call them bitty bops. I hold on to my little bitty bops, and the market's actually had a run over the last month or so. But understanding that if you're young, so there's a couple principles to investing, and the biggest thing is just your allocation strategy. So there's something called, the 80-20 rule, like in anything. With investing, especially if you're young, you should be in 80% stocks, equities, and 20% bonds, because you can take on risk. If the market shits the bed like it did in 2008, 2009, look at it now. You're 25. 10 years later, you're 35. Where are you going? You're not retiring. But if you're 80, you should probably be in 80% bonds, 20% stocks.
Preserving your money.
Right. You're not looking for growth. You're just looking for, if the market sucks.
Right. More stability.
You have stability. So understanding that the younger you are, the more risk you can take on. So like as an example, if you're 25 and you're all in cash or in bonds, what are you doing? Your money, they're losing money in inflation. Your money's not growing. Like, have some balls and put it in the market a little bit.
Yeah.
Conversely, if you're 80 and you're all equities, you're all the stock, it's like, pump the brakes, homie. You're 80. Like, I don't know how much longer you got left. Like, don't lose your money if there's a recession. So understanding that. And
so I
basics.
think that's what's interesting, though, was what's kind of happened in the last two down cycles in the late 90s, then 2008. It almost felt, or at least the media really made it seem like, wow, this has never happened before. This time it's really different. And I think it kind of scared a lot of people. Like, it made a lot of, let's call them millennials or young people at the time, like, think that, wow, like there's no security here. Like, why am I going to put my money in this market that I have no control over? It's being controlled by the big banks. And, things are happening that not even the experts understand, or no one expected it to happen. The mortgage crisis, all these things that were brand new, just, I think, scared so many people away and made them lose confidence in the system, just fundamentally.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, I mean, there's a difference between short term and long term. And if you're 25 years old, you should totally understand that you should be thinking long term. There's something called myopic, and it's only thinking like what's right in front of you. Mm-hmm. So if you were so scared of the stock market in 2009 and you panicked and you pulled all your money out, and let's say you had $100,000 net worth and you freaked out because now your investment worth was $50,000 and you stayed out of the market,
you lost a lot of money.
Your $100,000 would now be worth $300,000 now. So it's understanding that the market goes like this. I don't know if we're on camera now. The market goes like this, ups and down every day. But over time, every 10 years, it on average returns a 10% investment. Yeah. So there's going to be ups, there's going to be downs. It's a freaking roller coaster. But at the end of the day, you're going to be going up.
Correct.
And just understanding that. So, there's a lot of people that panicked because they don't understand how the market works. So people's biggest fear is, well, what happens if it just all crashes and everything goes down to zero and I lose it all? Let me tell you, if that happens, you've got a lot more to worry about than your investment portfolio. That means the world's coming to an end and you're not going to even be able to use your money. So let it ride.
Yeah.
Well, I think it also comes into that we were discussing a little bit earlier how all these, a lot of people that came out of school in 2008 during the Great Recession, and that's just kind of what they were greeted with: no jobs, a tanking stock market, mortgage crisis, a housing crisis. It was just crisis all over the place. Banks were going to fail. People were taking their money out of one bank, going to the other one because that's the one that wasn't going to fail.
Right.
Bailouts. But yeah, it's kind of interesting to see, I was taught what you're saying, right? You look at it, stocks for the long run.
Right.
You look at a long-term investment. But I also understand like that idea that lots of people came into like this really weird time when it came to financial the financial world. So
well, again, they came in because they came out of college or they were working. And again, we can still revisit principle number one, why people lose with money. They've never taken a money class.
yeah,
So they're freaking out. The world's coming to an end. Oh my God. It's like, relax. Okay. So me, all throughout my early 20s to my mid 20s is when I was club promoting, getting paid in drink tickets and trying to play sports and tell jokes when I was making no money. So I didn't really start making money until about 2007, 2008, like making money. And I wasn't investing yet. I was just cash. So I worked in the financial industry and 2008 happened and people said, how much money did you lose? And I said, zero. I lost $0 because I didn't have money in the market. And then people were telling me, well, since you lost nothing, like start putting it in. And I started investing in 2009. That's when I started my 401k.
great time.
The best time.
You timed it perfectly.
So, unbeknownst to me, it just happened that way. So now my 401k just alone has like $250,000 in it just for putting it in every year, putting in my $18K a year, getting my match from my company, and the market over time does what it does. I'm just a believer in the markets and capitalism. So
you shouldn't quit your job and just go travel the world with whatever you have left, take pictures and post them on Instagram. That's not going to make you rich, right?
You know, that sounds like a fun month, but you can't do that the rest of your life. You know, there's something called the FIRE movement. You heard about this?
Like fire, like the festival?
That's pretty bad. No, but there's something called the FIRE movement where it stands for financially independent, retire early. So all these, you know, it's usually for wealthier people that are making a ton of money now and they're trying to retire at age 50, let's say. And all right, like, what are you going to do for the next 50 years you're on the planet? So they work, they make, they work, they make, they save, and then they go do what they want with the rest of their life. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. The average person can't do that. The average person needs to find something they enjoy doing because they're going to be doing it for a long ass time. Hopefully it makes money, and just you save and you invest and you save and you invest. And with that 50-30-20 rule for your budget, you can do it all. Cover your needs, do what you want to do, but still save and invest. And, you know, find your chillin'. Find step 6. So definitely don't quit your job and think you're going to live in Thailand the rest of your life and post your pictures on Instagram.
Some people, you know, I go back to like the perception of things, but like, you know, there's that handful of guys or girls that have been able to do that successfully. So everybody feels like, oh, wow, like they did it, I can do it too. So it's, you know.
LeBron dunks a ball doesn't mean that you're going to be dunking the ball. Okay?
Exactly.
You're going to be more than likely the person in the stands watching the athletes dunk the ball.
Exactly. So
yeah.
Just be realistic with what's going on behind the scenes, not necessarily the perception or what people are trying to portray, which brings us full circle to the whole facade thing and living on South Beach and people throwing up dollars, making it rain.
Yeah, it's not real.
It's not real.
That's not sustainable.
Absolutely not. So you actually posted something really interesting which caught my attention today on your Instagram.
Okay.
That's what I'm looking at right now.
Oh, look at that.
So it's really interesting. It's like a list of different things that cost pretty much the same thing. And depending on how you look at it and what your priorities are, you find one to be more important than the other. And so, for example, you have over here, start a business, $1,000. People say, I can't justify that. iPhone XR, $1,000. The newest model is a necessity.
Right.
Right.
Oh,
so
I need the new phone.
You need it. $1,000.
Right. I'll spend $1,000 on that, but not to start a new business.
And it's funny how that works because, like, you know, a lot of times you're like, wow, like $1,000, like phone or $200 dinner, whatever it is. It almost seems like.
What were some other examples?
Yeah, actually, that's some of the other ones we have over here. Let me get back to it. Some of the ones you have over here, healthy grocery shopping, $100, too expensive. Dinner date, $100, reasonable.
Right.
Month supplements, $100, can't afford that. Night out drinking, $100, weekly occurrence.
Right.
Personal growth seminar, $250, crazy talk. Gucci belt 250, need to have it. Start a business 1,000. We just went through that one. 60 minutes at the gym. I wish I had time. 60 minutes watching Netflix. Time flies. Watch another one.
Totally.
So everything in life's about priorities.
I'm guilty of that. That's what my girlfriend says. Is like
The Netflix.
I got caught up in the Game of Thrones thing, and it happens. You sometimes
You're sitting across from another guy here, Julian.
Yeah, I watched it. What'd you think? What'd you think of the last season? Did you like the conclusion?
I fell asleep during it.
That bad, huh?
Yeah. Well, if it were just me, I probably wouldn't just sit around watching just hours of shows. But you're married. Yeah. You got to have like a show with your girlfriend or your significant. It's like, all right, the show's on. Come on, like sitting in bed watching a movie. It's part of like the date night thing. So that was sort of our thing, Game of Thrones, and I remember on the last episode it sucked. And
were you
wake up? I'm like,
did you watch from the beginning or did you kind of binge to catch up later on?
I started at the beginning and then I stopped and then
you caught up.
And then Amazon Prime and I caught up and
she
didn't even start and she caught up and she binged. A lot of binging going on with that game.
Yeah, so for me, like the first 6 seasons of Game of Thrones were like the greatest television ever made.
Yeah, it was really awesome.
Absolutely brilliant. Then the last season 7, it kind of like started going off a cliff, and then season 8, it was like just the biggest dick punch ever. Like, it just ended so poorly. It was like, imagine banging this beautiful model, and at the very end, you find out she's got a dick. That'd be
I hate when that happens.
Yeah, that's it. You committed all this time. That's it. You're in.
Yeah, no, so, I never got into it to begin with, but now that I know that it ends that
Game
way.
Game of Thrones or the models with dicks?
Either one, actually. Good. But no, I never got it. Actually, I've barely watched any TV or Netflix or anything since I started Ace Marks. I haven't watched TV.
You're better for it.
I guess
I promise you that.
I've had very few shows that I follow still. Like very few.
Game
of Thrones being one of them. That was an excellent show.
Breaking Bad, I think, was the last show that I really got
10
into.
Years ago. No, maybe not.
More, no, at least.
Really? Oh, no, not more than 10 years
ago.
No, less, I think.
Either way.
2012, maybe.
Yeah.
It's 2019 now.
It's almost 2020, baby.
There you go.
Yeah. Get your updated game plan for 2020, y'all.
Yeah. So I haven't gotten into any TV. Actually, I watched some on an airplane, but Game of Thrones I tried. Couldn't. Too complicated.
No, if you didn't get into it, by now,
it's not for you.
Yeah, I'm not.
It's not for you.
So this is fun. Where else we go from here?
No, I think we've done like 2 hours now.
Yeah, have we really?
We've done an hour 20.
Yeah,
an hour 20.
I missed my basketball game at this point.
No.
Yeah, that was at 7:30 in Hallandale.
We started late.
You're done.
How's your game these days?
It leaves a lot to be desired.
You were like a undersized power forward, I think, most of your career.
Yeah. I mean, depending on where I played, I may have been undersized or oversized.
So you played basketball.
I used to be point guard. I used to be pretty good.
This guy was almost in the NBA.
Wow,
that was not a joke.
Summer league, yeah.
That's awesome.
That's
from Denver Nuggets.
Pretty good.
Yeah, I was. So my claim to fame, at least growing up, was I was the best Jewish athlete in Miami, and that's sort of like being like the tallest midget. Congrats,
But you played college football.
Played college football,
and then you ended up in the NBA somehow.
I hated football, and I went to school in Greensboro, North Carolina, my freshman year.
Were you on a football scholarship?
Yeah,
it was, right?
I was on a football scholarship and hated it. And I basically, I liked basketball more than football. And I basically, because I was a student athlete, I was in with the basketball guys and I started playing there. And I was I transferred to Florida State. I was considering walking on to playing football. And then they were like, yeah, well, you could be on the team and be a tackling dummy for 3 years. And maybe senior year, we'll put you in the game, skipper. And I was like, I'm good. So I just played a lot of basketball, and then I moved out to Denver. I was playing a ton of basketball, and I just went to open tryouts for the Nuggets, and it was like the craziest story where they were announcing who was getting cut, and I just wasn't getting cut from the list, and it came down to like the final cut for the NBA Summer League roster, and I actually didn't stick around to even hear the results. I went up to the manager general manager of the team at that point, with Kiki Vandewey. And I said, I got to go because I'm meeting my dad in Vegas. I had a rocky relationship with my dad and talk to him for like 3 or 4 years. We were having this like meetup in Vegas. And I was like, I got to leave. And he's like, but you could, I'm like, I'm not even trying to even be here. I just happen to be pretty damn good. But knowing your limits. I know a lot of people like that didn't excel in sports in high school, or maybe they didn't, pursue that. And then like after college, they were the best player on their flag football team, and they were trying so hard, and they were, reliving what they didn't do. And it was like, where are you going with this?
Yeah.
Where are you going with this amazing flag football career? So understanding, okay, cool, time to pivot. And not, I see a lot of guys who are still stuck in high school, or I was great back in the day, like Al Bundy. I scored 4 touchdowns in high school. It's like, dude, move on. So,
are you still playing? All that being said,
no. I mean, I'll still shoot around from time to time or whatever, but it's just not a focus because, like, I'm 39 years old, being good at basketball. Like, where is that getting me?
Right.
I do have a lot of friends in the NBA.
Yes, you do. And some of them sleep on your couch every now and then.
He's investing his time now. He's not spending time. Basketball would be spending time.
Exactly.
Unless you make the NBA,
Yes.
then it'd be investing time.
No.
I'm not making that up. They really sleep on his couch.
That's awesome. How did they end up on your couch?
Well, that's a long story.
Crazy story.
Yeah.
Crazy night at 11.
One of my
3 days later, they end up on your couch.
one of my best friends is this guy Chris Humphreys. That he back when I was playing basketball and met him, and we developed a really close friendship. And
How did you meet him playing basketball?
so my mom's from Minneapolis, so I used to go to Minneapolis in the summers, and he was Mr. Minnesota basketball, and I ended up playing with him, becoming friends with him and his crew. And I said, hey, anytime you're in Miami, hit me up. And I was in the nightlife scene after college, and we ended up becoming good buddies and hanging out and becoming one of my best friends. And then the whole Kardashian thing, and that's a whole nother story. But through him and through his agent, I've met a lot of NBA contacts. And one of them, signed with the Miami Heat a couple of years ago, Kelly Olynyk, 7-foot white guy.
Yeah, Kelly O.
And, when he first moved to Miami, he needed a place to stay, and I was out of town. And I said, well, take my apartment, dope little apartment right across from the Heat Arena. Take it, and, when I, good luck looking for an apartment. I'm going to be in LA for a few weeks. And when I came back to Miami, I said, did you find an apartment yet? He goes, no. I go, what are you going to do? He's like, well, do you mind if I just crash on the couch tonight? Yeah, all right, dude. Like, he just signed a $50 million contract. That's probably the most important part of the story. He was with the Boston Celtics. He signed a $50 million contract to sign with the Heat. And he's crashing on my couch for a night. A night goes by, couch. 2 night goes by, couch. 30 days later, an entire NBA preseason, Kelly's still crashing on my couch because he didn't have an apartment yet. And it was just like, to circle all back, he's like, look, I'd rather hang with my buddy, crash on your couch. I ain't too good to crash. Save that money. What am I going to be in a hotel room by myself? So it was really like an eye-opener to me that if this dude who just signed a $50 million contract at age 26 can just crash on his buddy's couch, like, you can do it too at home.
Yeah.
So he's as
You wanna-
chill as it gets.
You want to be that guy. You don't want to be the guy that's on the Broke documentary, right? That may earn $200 million in his career, and 2 years out of the league, he's like flipping burgers at Burger King, which there's nothing wrong with. But if you made $200 million, you shouldn't be there.
There's so many athletes, like you put in your notes, the guys Billy Corbin and Alfie Spellman did a documentary called Broke, and it basically goes to show that so many NFL athletes are broke within 3 years. So many NBA players are broke within 5 years. Because those are the types of people that have to save their money, maybe more than anyone, because they only have a small window of making millions. Then they're never going to get those paychecks again. You might make $5 million a year when you're 21, and you're buying a house, you're buying a car, you're buying the gold chains. Next thing you know, you're out of the league by 27, and that money has to last you the rest of your life.
Right, and they're used to a certain type of lifestyle.
And they're used to a certain type of lifestyle. So my boy Kelly, he was crashing on couches. He rents. Keep in mind, his rent is like a small fraction of his income. Rents.
Right.
He got a free car from like Toyota. Crashing on couches, like that guy's gonna be great.
Yeah. So the 50-30-20 rule for them should be more like the 5-3-2 rule.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah. It's almost unfair, right? That you're 21, you come out, you're making all this money, and you really don't know what to do with it. And it's, man, you look back, some of those situations, you look back when they're 40, and it's like, wow, if only like I knew then what I know now.
If I knew then what I knew now.
It's like the epitome of that.
Totally.
And it's almost like unfair for that to happen to them.
Yeah.
Like
the
for
age too, though. The age that you're in your athletic prime, you're a kid.
But that's
You're
why
a
you're
kid,
like a
18-year-old
kid,
kid,
and most of them never had any money before, like, right?
Yeah.
They've never seen $1 million, like much less think that they'd ever have it, and all of a sudden it's like in your bank account.
Right.
Yeah, but you know what? I actually feel better for those guys who made the money and just blew it doing what they love, than the guys who got robbed by their financial advisors. And you hear a lot of those stories too.
That's also terrible.
Like just their one accountant just started funneling money off year after year, and then they go back when they go to retire, like, oh, we're gonna do this money, I'm gonna start a business. Wait, how much money do I have there? And it's all gone. Like that to me is more of a travesty. At least the other guys, like, I mean, not that you should do either one, obviously, get someone you trust, but at 18 years old, you don't know anybody that you could, like, everyone's got to be a referral, right? I mean, and most of these people are coming not from like wealthy families where they have people that they're, this guy managed my parents' money for years and I know he's trustworthy.
Right.
These are like people that don't know anybody. They're 18 years old. They're given millions of dollars, and you got to just pick someone out of a Google search of like, give this guy, this access to this much money, and you have no idea how to manage it. Mm-hmm. It goes back to your saying about education, like the whole college system being like, where's the courses that teach you how to negotiate, or the courses that teach you how to manage your money, or the courses that teach you anything practical that you'll ever use in your entire fucking life?
Yeah. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Brings it full circle.
The school system is
broken.
Right.
Yeah.
And school system broken will lead you to being broke. So
yeah, that's definitely something you have to think about going forward. I mean, are schools really worth it? I mean, universities or colleges, are they really worth it to get into that much debt? I mean, you look at even trade schools, you could do it in half the time, like an eighth of the amount of money, even more in some cases, and those
come
jobs
out with a skill.
Yeah, and the skill, and those jobs pay pretty well. Like, plumbers, electricians, those guys make $80,000 a year, $90,000 a year. Most lawyers aren't even making that are coming out right now.
That's a huge movement that people are going to have to start looking up about. Trade schools.
Trade schools are the way to go.
There's nothing wrong with being and having a trade and having a skill. Yeah. People have had that all their life. There's, not everybody can be the marketing director at their company, and not everyone can be the social media manager at their company. Like, you need plumbers, you need engineers, you need skill sets.
Yeah.
There's stories about in New York City, garbage men are making $100,000 a year.
Yeah.
Supply and demand. So,
And a close friend of mine from undergrad, he worked through school as a locksmith.
Locksmith.
And, after school he went back to New York, continued doing that, ended up owning his own truck. Then he owned 2 trucks, 3 trucks, 4 trucks. Has a very, very, very nice, comfortable life.
Came out with no debt, right?
No debt. Actually, I don't know his financial situation, but I know he has a really nice boat and a really nice house in the Hamptons. So the locksmith business is good.
It all started with picking some locks.
That's right. Plumbers, same thing. Electricians, plenty of them. Make a lot of money.
Yeah. I mean, it's something that I'm, advocating is, like, who says you have to graduate high school and go directly into college and get out of college when you're 22 and have $50,000 of student loan? Like, who?
The parents say that.
I mean, who wrote that those are the rules? So, what I recommend is maybe graduate high school. If you're unsure of what you want to do or where you want to work or what you want to do with the rest of your life when you're 18, why would you know that? Enter the workforce, get a job, start making money, seeing what you want to do, save up some money. And then when you're like, oh, you know what? I really want to do that. Then you can go back to college and you're pursuing a passion that you know that you want to follow.
Yeah. There's some purpose to the degree.
Exactly.
Not just some.
I went to college and my degree my major was general communications. I knew that I was an effective communicator. My classes were just as generic in communicating as it gets. So, I mean, the vaguest degree is my point. So many people do that where they go into college, I'm taking my prerequisites, classes you have to take, and you not sure what you want to do with the rest of your life when you're 19, and you end up deciding on a major, and, you know, you also have to pick a minor. You got a minor in something. I picked a minor that was just the easiest minor, philosophy, which has served me 0% well.
Right.
So ultimately, this all comes back to the game has changed. You know, you got to get out of that 80s, 90s mentality of he who dies with the most toys wins, and understand that it's 2020 and be flexible and keep your overhead low, and you know, be flexible with your prospects, be flexible with what you want to do in your life, be able to make moves. Technology is moving so fast. There's a amazing philosopher, author, Thomas Friedman, if you ever heard of him. He's written some major books. He, you know, his whole thing was, he said, he's in his 60s now. He says, you know, growing up in the 70s and 80s, the wind was at his back. As long as you got a job and entered the workforce, figure you'll be great. And he says, now it doesn't work that way. And you need to update your game plan every 6 months. Yeah. Every 6 months. What's going on? Where do I stand? Is this the career for me? Is there a better job? Can I move to a better city? Flexible, 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 flexible. If you think you're just going to buy a house, picket fence, 2-car garage, this is where I'm going to live the rest of my life.
And get a pension at the end.
There's a rude awakening at the end for you.
Yeah.
So
yeah, definitely
stay flexible, my friends.
Definitely. Going back to the earlier point, college is definitely, you know, oversaturated. But and then if you look even further, I mean, the whole stuff about what's coming out with automation right now is a scary thought of how much is being automated. I mean, obviously you talk about Amazon and how many retail stores and department stores are out of business, and those are retail jobs that are gone, and you know, all those things are gone, and they're getting kind of consolidated into like bigger companies that are automating away a lot of this stuff. Radiology, think about radiology for a second. Like, wow, you know, radiologist, a doctor, is a good profession. Are radiologists going to exist in 10 years? I couldn't even tell you if they will, because a computer can look at an image and tell you that just look at what Facebook and Instagram does with their nudity filters. I mean, they can see a nipple that is 3 pixels exposed on the outer limits of the bikini and then ban your account. You think they imagine how much a computer can analyze how many shades of gray there are in an MRI or something like that. I mean, a computer can reference millions and millions of images. A person, even the smartest, can reference 1,000. Yeah. It's not even, you can't even compare. I'd rather have the computer. I mean, not now, but in 10 years, I'd rather have a computer analyzing the MRIs and stuff like that. So I think a lot of even major professions are probably going to get completely wiped out, which is going to be interesting. I mean, self-driving cars too, like truck drivers, Uber drivers, all these things. I mean, they're all going to be gone.
But that's one of the problems. That's why there's this, actually, that going back to the headline, if you actually look at the data that it's referring to, that this generation makes less than the previous generation, actually there's not really a big difference between people that are educated, that have a college education, a bachelor's degree or more. The difference is really in those that don't. So if you don't have a high school diploma today, there aren't those manufacturing jobs, or in the future there won't be those Uber driving jobs, right? There's less and less of those like low skill, low wage jobs that there used to be 10, 15, 20 years ago. So that's really where the gap is happening.
Yeah, that's the big one. And that goes back to the trade school thing. Like that's a skill, a low cost education that's going to provide you a pretty decent income that is not a job that can be automated away. Computers aren't going to walk into your house and fix your plumbing anytime soon. Yeah. That's not something you got to worry about.
This has been a free plug for like trade schools of America.
Well,
we should get one as a sponsor.
Yeah, I mean, well, I'm happen to be a millennial also, so I want to defend millennials a little bit, even though I agree with a lot of those problems that it's so true that millennials do. But like a lot of the situations, they're also kind of the situation that I think we have right now. There's a lot of things that are scary about the future. Why do people have to come? If you want to do what you want to do and get a competitive job, you've got to put yourself into a ridiculous amount of debt that is bankruptcy immune, which like that whole concept of how that got pulled off is crazy. And like that, and not only that, the rising cost of healthcare, rising cost of living, housing markets, all this stuff is just sucking up more and more of your salary. You're coming into this with barely any potential to save,
right.
Which is why I think it's even more important to make sure that you get on a good plan. And, you know, 'cause, I mean, look, if you're making $70K a year, you expect to live in a certain type of community or a certain type of area or live with a certain type of, you know, square footage or all these things. But then when you look at how much debt you have because of all this stuff, you realize, no. I mean, I actually have to live well below what my parents would have been at that same income level. I have to be well below until I pay all this off and then catch up. And now I can live normal, which is a crazy thought. And it's asking millennials to sacrifice a whole bunch of things that no one else had to sacrifice just because of the way the systems are in place right now. And the millennials didn't put that system in place. But regardless of, you know, playing the blame game or whatever, it's a responsibility that I think all millennials have to be educated, be smart, create a game plan, and you know, adjust to it. And I think that your advice is awesome for it. I think that it's all really good advice. And, you know, concentrating on assets, right? Or your net value.
Net worth.
Net worth. Sorry, net worth. That was the word. Yeah, net worth.
Your net worth is more important than your paycheck.
Absolutely. And I think that is like an amazing way to look at it.
Thank you.
Nice. So Adam,
cool.
I think
what's the big wrap up?
Oh yeah, give us
what's
some
the
closing.
Wrap up? No, I don't know. This is your show.
Let people know how to get a hold of you, how to follow you, how to get your information.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's, as Sean Evans says on Hot Ones. I don't know if anyone watches that, but Adam, we're rolling out the red carpet for you. Plug what you got to plug. Say what you got to say. You got a camera over there. You got one over there. You got one over there. You got one over there. You got a mic in front of your face. Go.
Thank you. Great.
You're very welcome.
So follow me on social media. SOS Talks Money. SOS Talks Money. I've learned that you should make all your social media handles the same. So I used to have a different handle for different things. So
no one can find you then.
Right. Yeah. So SOS Talks Money. And
how do you spell sauce?
SOS.
Emergency.
Yeah, emergency, spend or save, however you want to let, you know,
Nice.
Sometimes I'll put $2 in for the S.
Yeah, save our savings.
So, you know, I have a show where you know, again, on SOS Talks Money, a lot of celebrity or influencer interviews. So there's the sizzle part of the meal. But the steak, if you will, you know, the sizzle steak analogy.
The Sizzler thing?
Right.
Those don't exist anymore. I don't
No,
think.
you're talking about the Sizzler buffet.
The Sizzler, yeah.
So what they'll tell people is, you don't sell the steak, you sell the sizzle. Right?
Yeah.
So, it's every steakhouse is the same steak, but it's
the sizzle.
The steak at Capitol Grill or Morton's is better than Joe's Steakhouse, you know? So, sizzle is all the interviews and the influencers, but the steak is really a money coaching program and helping young Americans, or any American for that matter, just get better with their money. And I run them through these 6 principles of wealth, and I've sort of gamified it. So you get your score, you see where you're at out of 6, and then we give you the next steps you need to take so you're chilling with money. So
nice.
And the
awesome.
And the slogan, as always, is save that money.
Is that a hashtag?
Yeah,
too?
absolutely.
That's a hashtag. It's definitely a hashtag.
Yeah, it is a great show. I recommend everyone definitely go check it out. Awesome stuff.
Sauce.
Yeah, thanks,
We'll be
man.
watching you talk
Thank
money.
you for having me.
Appreciate it.
Thank you for coming by.
And do you guys want to plug the shoes at all, or
No.
we
We
don't do that.
don't plug.
We
shoes.
don't. No, we don't plug A Smart Shoes. Do not go check it out.
Yeah.
do not
Yeah,
go check it?
Absolutely
Yes.
not.
Well,
Or whatever. Are you wearing any?
I am wearing shoes, but I am not wearing Ace Mark shoes.
Oh,
so.
We got to do something about that.
We should like deliver a pair of shoes to every single guest that comes on. Maybe that's the way we plug it.
Okay.
I think so.
Right? Yeah. Like here's this pair of sneakers. Here's a pair of something.
I'm not so worried about plugging it. You know, it's
Yeah.
the whole idea is we want to add
I've
some
actually
value
never
over here.
had a pair of Ace Mark shoes, and I
It's a
would
shame.
love the opportunity to test them out.
What a shame. I think you're going to be in for great walking
something-
footwear experience.
Something that I've actually grappled with, and you know, I've read your guys' story a little bit, and it's okay if you edit this guy out because you don't want to.
No, there's no editing here.
Okay, so I saw on your website, because I did my due diligence, that when you go shopping for a nice pair of men's dress shoes, you essentially have had 3 options. You either have like cheap, crappy ones that just don't, maybe they're $40 and they don't look so good and don't look good. Then you have sort of like a middle ground that are fine. Maybe they're $100. They're okay, but they're not exactly awesome. Or then there's just such a wide gap to
huge
next
increase.
thing you know, you got your like $400 or $500 or more really expensive men's dress shoe. And, where you guys have sort of come in is sort of that middle gap where it's like, all right, it's not average, but it's not the high end stuff. So it's sort of in that middle, like the Warby Parker of shoes, if you will, where it's maybe $200, not $500 for a dress shoe. And that's something that me not wanting to, not being not spending money, be the save that money guy. I just can't justify spending $500 or more on shoes. I can't.
What it is, we actually have that quality at the lower price point because of the whole direct to consumer business model. But actually, the way, as a financial guy, the way that you should really be looking at purchases, clothing purchases,
tell me,
shirt, whatever it is price per wear. So if you go into an H&M or some other fast fashion,
is that a PPW, price per wear? Is that
PPW,
a thing?
yeah, price per wear.
Okay, I just learned something.
So if you go into one of those fast fashion brands, you're gonna buy a dress shirt which you wear it 3, 4, 5 times, whatever it is. You spend $20.
3 washes, it's ruined.
Exactly. It's not gonna look the same. You're gonna put it on and go, oh, like this doesn't look so good. Let's just go get a new one, right? It sounds cheap. I'm just gonna get a new one. It's only $20, whatever it is.
Right.
But if you do the math and you figure out that each let's say you wear that $20 shirt 4 times, it costs you $5 every time you wore it, right? Mm-hmm. Well, let's say you can buy a shirt that's going to cost you $150, but that shirt's going to look good for the next 2 to 3 years, right? You're going to be able to wear it like, every weekend for 2 to 3 years. Your price per wear is a lot less. So it's
quality is what you're saying.
Quality.
Yeah,
so how does that
longevity.
work? How does that work when you're buying $500 shoes?
Well,
super expensive.
So there's a point that it doesn't make sense anymore, right? So if that's kind of where we come in. So if you're spending $1,000 on a pair of shoes, or you can spend $300 on one of our shoes, they're going to last you the same. They're going to look the same. They're going to feel the same. It's going to be the same quality. And then ours is just a much better value. At that point, your price per wear,
your
PPW is much lower.
Yeah. You're basically just you're paying because it's expensive. Yeah. So like essentially what we that was a big thing going when Paul started Ace Marks, and we started talking initially in the beginning about that price point, especially being under $300. It's kind of like a no man's land, because what you have is like, it's not the cheap shoe where it's just like, oh, I'm going to go spend $99 on a pair of shoes, but it's also not the $700 shoe where people are associating, if it's not $700, it's not good quality. Yeah. But that's not the case for us. It's because we use new technologies, direct to consumer business model. We use a lot of data to be able to forecast.
Low overhead.
Well, yeah, exactly. Well, and a lot of it comes with inventory risk, right? We use we have like a method where during our spring campaigns, we do it all new collections based on pre-order. So people can go in there and buy everything on pre-order for under $200, and we get the data of what people like, what size they're going to be, and we don't have huge inventory risk. Where normally, like you have to get all these different sizes, and everything you don't sell gets added to the cost of the shoe. Like they'll forecast, we're not going to be able to sell 30% of the leftovers, so we just have to add that into the cost, and that just increases the cost. So we actually cut that and we pass the savings on. So it's just additional ways that we're able to bring that price lower, but price is so associated with quality. And so that's one of the big challenges for us, is to get people to actually try it. When they try it, they're like, holy crap, I can't even tell the difference between this and the $800 shoe I just bought. And then they come back and they buy more, and they stop buying those $800 shoes. So
save that money, get the good quality PPW.
Exactly.
Get your PPW.
Exactly. and look good. And you can look good while you do it. There's not a lot of great options. If you're trying to buy a suit or trying to buy a nice pair of dress shoes, there's not like a lot of good options if you want to look good. If you go cheap, you're going to look cheap. So that's another big part of it too.
Confidence, right? You got to look good in most situations. It changes the way you feel, your confidence. You go into a big meeting.
Look good to feel good.
A negotiation. You're trying to negotiate your salary. You want an extra like 30, 40 grand a year. An extra 30, 40 grand a year. That's a nice negotiation, right? You got to look the part.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, you want that raise? What shoes are you wearing, sir? Right. Oh, these are Ace Marks. Sold. Done. Here's
They're going to be
50K.
throwing money at you. It's
Throwing
like you're
money
walking
your
around
way.
an 11, you know?
It's an investment at that point.
Callback in comedy. That's called the callback. That's what,
Better than
this whole thing started, and that's where it ends. That's all.
better than your Roth IRA. Invest in a
right.
couple of pairs of Ace Marks. It'll pay off long time.
In investment, it goes from good to great. You've got 401ks, Roth IRAs, Ace Mark shoes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Makes complete sense.
Yeah.
Don't edit that out.
No, we will not. All right, man. Thanks a lot, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah, man.
I'm gonna
Thank
do
you
my
very
little-
much.
my
Thank you,
little-
gentlemen. This was fun.
My little,
Oh, the
that's
fairy
that
dust.
is the
No,
wrong
that's
button. That is the wrong button. We will not be editing that out. See you guys.
Dude, that was so much fun.